Close your eyes and imagine a night long ago when the world was quieter and darker, and every flame of fire felt like a heartbeat against the cold. Imagine walking through a castle built of stone and memory, where echoes linger in the corridors and the air hums with forgotten stories. Tonight, we journey together into that world to feel its chill, its silence, and its fragile warmth. This isn't a tale of kings and wars, but of something simpler, how people once dreamed, how they sought sleep beneath the weight of winter and the whisper of time. The night begins with a sound not of voices or wind, but of a door heavy and ancient closing against the world outside. It groans on its iron hinges and settles with a dull thud that echoes through the vast stone hallways. For a moment, silence follows, the kind of silence that has texture, thick, cold, and strangely alive. You stand in it feeling the stillness press against your skin, hearing your own breath as if it belonged to someone else. The torches along the wall flicker their flames, bending in the faint draft that sneaks through cracks in the old wood. The air smells of soot and damp earth. Every sound, the crack of the fire, the shuffle of a servant in the distance, carries farther than it should. The walls themselves seem to listen. It's strange how quickly a castle that looks majestic in daylight can feel lonely at night. You might think it's a place of power, of safety, but as the wind moans outside, you realize it is a fortress not only against enemies, but against warmth, against comfort, against the softness of life. Your boots echo as you step across the flagstone floor, the rhythm steady and hollow. Each footfall seems to wake the past, a faint whisper, a sigh caught in the draft. You pull your cloak tighter, but the chill finds its way through, as if the cold itself were breathing. The stones hold its store, it radiated back, like a secret the centuries refuse to let go of. This is the first lesson of the medieval night. The walls protect, but they do not care. Far above, the rafters groan softly. Somewhere a rope swings the chain of a bell, or perhaps the sign of a door left unlatched. The sound is gentle, but it makes the hairs on your neck rise. The air feels older here, denser. You can almost taste the iron from the torches, the salt of the stone. It is the flavor of a place that remembers too much. Outside, wind howls across the battlements, swirling through arrow slits like sharp knives of air. Inside, the fire burns low, its orange light trembling on the edges of the dark. The warmth it offers is fragile, a circle no larger than a man's reach. Beyond that, the night waits, patient and endless. You walk toward the hearth and stretch out your hands. The heat barely reaches you. The flame stings your eyes with smoke, and yet you stay close, unwilling to step away from its glow. In that small flicker of light, the world still feels human. The further you move from it, the more the stone swallows sound, until even your thoughts feel muffled. It's easy to forget that castles were never meant to be homes. They were machines of defense, moats, drawbridges, arrow loops, murder holes, all brilliance in war and misery in peace. Their walls could withstand catapults, but not the winter wind. And so those who lived within them endured. Night after night, century after century, they built fires, piled blankets, prayed, and waited for dawn. Imagine yourself one of them now. Your fingers are stiff from the cold. The torches along the corridor burn unevenly, their light struggling against the darkness. The stones beneath your feet are slick with condensation. Every surface seems to breathe chill into the air. You pull your cloak around you and feel the rough wool scratch your neck. It doesn't matter. What matters is surviving the night. You pause beside a narrow window slit and peer into the darkness outside. The courtyard below lies silent, a patchwork of frost and shadow. The moon glints faintly on the helmets of the guards pacing along the wall. They move slowly, stamping their feet to keep warm, their breath puffing into the air like ghosts. The cold does not care whether they are noble or poor. It finds them all. Turning back, you make your way toward the inner hall, where a single fire still burns. The smell of smoke thickens. A hound stirs in the corner, lifting its head as you pass, eyes gleaming in the half-light. You nod to it softly as though greeting an old friend. The creature sighs and lays its head back down, curling into itself for warmth. For a moment, you imagine the generations who have walked these same corridors before you. Kings, servants, cooks, scribes, all shivering, all chasing the same fleeting comfort of heat. You wonder what they dreamed about when they finally slept. Did they dream of sunlight, of summer, or simply of warmth that didn't fade before morning? Your hand brushes the wall as you walk. The stone feels damp and rough beneath your fingertips. Yet there's a strange comfort in its permanence. It has stood through storms, sieges, and centuries of winter nights. It has heard laughter, fear, prayer, and silence. And now, tonight, it listens to you. You reach another door, smaller, heavier, and push it open. Inside, the space is quieter still. A small chamber, a bed with heavy curtains, a chest at its foot. A single oil lamp burns near the headboard, its light trembling like a tired heartbeat. The air smells faintly of wax and old wool. This is where someone will try to sleep. You can almost feel their hesitation, the way they sit on the edge of the bed, remove their boots, and listen to the moan of wind through the arrow slits. Sleep here is not a simple thing. It must be built layer by layer like armor. There are no soft mattresses, no gentle hum of heat, only ritual. Close the shutters, bank the fire, draw the curtains, wrap yourself in furs, whisper a prayer, and hope that the night will be merciful. You look around once more. The torch by the door sputters. The shadows along the walls dance and twist like living shapes. Somewhere deep in the castle, a bell tolls once, twice the mark of another passing hour. And in that sound lies the promise of dawn, still far away yet inevitable. So tonight, as you lie in your own warm bed, with modern comforts all around, imagine that echo of the wooden door closing long ago. Feel the weight of the stone, the breath of the wind, the faint comfort of the flame. And let the thought soften your heart, because even in the darkest, coldest nights, humanity always found a way to endure. Before you drift away, take a slow breath. And if you wish to wander again through these ancient nights and gentle stories, I invite you to subscribe to Gentle Sleep Stories, where warmth and history meet in quiet dreams. The echo of that wooden door still lingers in your mind, the sound of a world sealed against the night. You can almost feel the weight of it behind you as you walk deeper into the castle. The narrow corridors open slowly into something wider, brighter, and alive with flickering light. Ahead, a warm orange glow beckons the heart of the fortress, the place where both body and spirit sought relief from the long winter darkness. You step into the great hall, and the change is almost shocking. After the silence of the stone corridors, this room feels like another world. Loud, golden breathing. The air hums with warmth and voices. Torches blaze along the walls, their flames rippling like ribbons. The smoke curls toward the timbered ceiling, thick enough to taste, carrying the scent of roasted meat, burning oak, and damp wool. Here the castle finally feels human. The long wooden tables stretch from wall to wall, scarred with the marks of 100 feasts. Pewter cups clink. Dogs weave beneath the benches, tails wagging, snouts pressed to the floor in search of fallen scraps. Laughter rises and falls like waves. Even the shadows seem softer here, tinted by firelight instead of frost. At the center burns the great hearth, a massive square of stone, glowing with defiance against the cold. Logs as thick as your arm crack and split in the heat. Sparks leap upward, brief stars that vanish before they reach the smoke-dark beams. Around that blaze, the people gather, nobles in heavy cloaks, servants with flushed cheeks, children curled half asleep near the warmth. Every face glows the same shade of amber. For a little while the castle breathes as one living thing. If you listen closely beneath the laughter and the clatter, you can hear the deeper sound, the sigh of contentment that always follows warmth. The great hall was more than a dining room. It was a ritual of survival. Here the cold was kept at bay not only by fire but by presence, the heat of hundreds of bodies, the rhythm of conversation, the comfort of belonging. You sit near the edge of the crowd, your back against the stone wall. The warmth from the hearth reaches you in slow pulses, fading with distance. The wall behind you still radiates chill, but it no longer bites. You watch as a servant pours ale into a wooden mug, the froth spilling over his fingers. Someone begins to sing a rough tune about harvest and home. The voices join in unevenly, yet together they fill the hall with a kind of joy that no luxury could buy. It's strange to think that this warmth, this fleeting golden moment, might be the only true comfort these people would feel all day. When the feast ended, the hall would empty, and the cold would reclaim its kingdom. But for now, the fire wins. You can see it in every face turned toward the hearth, every hand extended to the glow. The air thickens with smoke, laughter, and the sharp tang of wood resin. The dogs stretch lazily, bellies full. The servants whisper jokes as they carry trays of bread and steaming pottage. Someone throws another log onto the fire, and a fresh burst of sparks illuminates the rafters. You tilt your head back and see how the light dances on the carved beams, painting them gold, then shadow again. For a heartbeat, it feels eternal. But the night moves on. The cups empty. The songs fade. The fire that roared begins to settle into a deep red bed of coals. A single voice speaks softly, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a blessing for those who must face the chill upstairs. The benches scrape as people rise. Cloaks are pulled tight once more. The room that had been alive with sound begins to empty, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the low whisper of the embers. You linger near the fire, reluctant to go. The warmth against your skin feels like memory itself, something you know you'll miss the moment it's gone. Your cheeks burn, but your back already senses the cold creeping in. You stretch your hands toward the flame one last time, watching the light flicker across your fingers. The fire stings your eyes. fills them with tears that have nothing to do with smoke. A servant stirs the embers, the iron poker scraping softly. The glow brightens for a moment, then dims again. The smell of wood smoke clings to everything: your hair, your cloak, your very breath. When you finally step away, you carry it with you like a keepsake. The hall behind you quiets into stillness. Shadows reclaim the corners where laughter once lived. A half-empty cup tips and rolls along the floor, the faint clink echoing like a farewell. The great hearth remains, its last coals pulsing red. A tired heartbeat in a sleeping body of stone. It will smolder until dawn, when servants will rake out the ashes and start again, the eternal rhythm of flame and frost. As you walk toward the staircase, the warmth begins to fade with each step. The torchlight narrows and the air grows sharper, thinner. The stone floor cools beneath your boots. You glance back once more. The doorway frames the dying fire, its glow spilling onto the floor like a sunset trapped indoors. Then even that disappears as you turn the corner. Up ahead, the stairway coils upward into shadow. The draft meets you halfway, icy and relentless, reminding you that comfort was only borrowed, never earned. Still, you carry a fragment of that warmth within you. The memory of the great hall, the laughter, the glow of faces lit by fire. It is enough to guide you onward. Soon you will climb those steps, pass through another corridor, and find the solitude of a chamber waiting, smaller, quieter, but colder still. The fire downstairs will become only a story told by your skin. Yet even then, the memory of it will linger, like the echo of a heartbeat in a vast stone chest. So before we follow that echo further, before we climb into the colder rooms above, take a moment to rest here at the edge of the fading fire. Let the warmth settle deep in your thoughts. Let it become your own small ember against the night. And if you wish to return to these quiet journeys through time and flame, where history breathes softly before sleep, I invite you to subscribe to Gentle Sleep Stories, so you'll never miss the next gentle step into the past. The warmth of the great hall fades behind you, like the last note of a song dissolving into silence. As you leave, the air grows thin and sharp again, tasting faintly of stone and smoke. Your hands, still tingling from the fire, curl deeper into your cloak. The laughter, the clinking cups, the golden glow, all of it is swallowed by the dark. Only the faint echo of your footsteps remains as you begin to climb the narrow staircase, spiraling upward into the sleeping heart of the castle. The first step is colder than you expect. The stone beneath your boots feels alive, as though it's been waiting all night to reclaim the heat you borrowed. The walls press close on either side, rough and wet with condensation. Each breath you take forms a ghostly cloud that drifts upward, vanishing into the dark. Somewhere above the draft, whispers through arrow slits, sighing like the voice of the winter itself. You climb slowly, your fingers grazing the wall to steady yourself. The stones are uneven, shaped by centuries of use, their edges smoothed by countless hands and feet. You imagine the ones who climbed here before you: knights, servants, noble women, sleepy children wrapped in furs, all trudging upward through the same breathless chill, all seeking the promise of rest that lay somewhere beyond the turning stair. The torch in your hand flares and sputters. Its light stretches ahead in a trembling ribbon, catching the glint of iron on the wall brackets, rings, old tools left to rust. The air carries the faint smell of smoke from below, mingled with the damp odor of stone and age. The deeper you go, the quieter the world becomes, until the only sound left is the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat, echoing faintly through the spiral. When you pause midway, you can hear the castle breathe. The timbers creak, a door groans far below. Wind moans through a corridor like the low call of a distant horn. Even in stillness, this place is never truly silent. It murmurs to itself in the language of stone, the slow settling of walls, the drip of unseen water, the shuffle of air through narrow cracks. And in those sounds there's something ancient and strangely comforting. The castle is alive, and in its cold endurance, it promises that you too might survive the night. You resume climbing. The steps curve tighter, the torchlight painting the walls in uneven gold. Your shadow stretches high above you, bending with the turn of the stair, like some ghostly twin that refuses to lag behind. You count the steps, lose track, and count again, as though the act of numbering them might make the climb shorter. Finally, the stair opens into a small landing. The air changes, not warmer but heavier, as if thickened by the faint smoke of an upstairs hearth. Ahead, a narrow corridor stretches into gloom. A single torch burns at the far end, its flame leaning under the invisible hand of the wind. The walls here are decorated with faded tapestries, their colors muted by time. The fabric ripples gently in the draft, and for an instant the woven figures, knights, saints, hunting hounds, seem to stir. You walk slowly down the passage. Beneath your boots the floor is scattered with straw, to soften footsteps and soak up dampness. The scent of old herbs lingers, lavender and rosemary, long since dried, but still defiant against decay. A faint glimmer of candlelight escapes from beneath one of the doors. Someone, perhaps a servant, still tends the chambers, checking that the fires haven't gone out completely. You pause before your own door. The wood is thick, reinforced with iron bands. You press your palm against it, feeling the cold seep through to your bones. On the other side lies your room, the place meant to shelter you from the night. Yet as you lift the latch and step inside, the air meets you like the breath of a cellar. It smells faintly of ashes, damp wool, and the lingering chill of stone that no fire can truly chase away. A single lamp flickers near the bed, casting long, trembling shadows across the walls. The bed itself stands tall, its wooden posts carved with worn patterns of vines and leaves. Heavy curtains hang from the canopy, their folds thick with dust. You brush your hand along the edge of the coverlet, rough wool, coarse but clean. The mattress sighs when you press down, filled with straw that rustles faintly beneath the fabric. You sit for a moment at the edge of the bed, listening. The sounds of the great hall have vanished entirely. Only the wind remains faint, restless, slipping through every unseen gap. It whispers along the stones like a living thing, searching, always searching for a way inside. The flame of the lamp shivers in response, shrinking low, then stretching tall like a heartbeat struggling against exhaustion. You pull your cloak tighter, then lean toward the hearth at the corner of the room. A small pile of embers glows there, faint and red, their warmth little more than memory. You stir them gently with a poker, coaxing a spark to life. For a moment the flame flares, painting the room with a soft orange pulse. You hold your hands to it, feeling its brief blessing of heat, before it fades again. In this quiet, you understand something simple and profound. The people who lived here did not chase luxury. They chased endurance. Every night was a careful negotiation with the elements, a pact between human ingenuity and the indifference of stone. To survive meant to think, to plan, to move slowly, and to cherish every flicker of warmth as though it were a miracle. You rise and move to the narrow window slit. Outside, the world is a sea of black and silver. The moonlight glints on frost that coats the courtyard roofs. Far below, the great hall is dark now, its fire reduced to ash. The guards pace the walls, their torches small as stars. You can almost hear their boots against the stones, steady, patient, resigned. Above, the sky is vast and cold, the kind of sky that makes you feel both small and infinite at once. You close the shutter latchet and turn back to the bed. The lamp burns lower. The chamber feels both intimate and immense, as though the darkness has no walls at all. You draw aside the heavy curtain slip beneath the rough blankets and let the weight of the fabric settle over you. The smell of wool and smoke surrounds you, familiar and grounding. Your body sinks slowly into stillness. The chill lingers at your fingertips and toes, but your breathing evens. You think of the fire below, the laughter fading into silence, the endless climb of the stair, and the quiet persistence of life that endures even in cold stone. As your eyelids grow heavy, you understand the night is not your enemy. It is simply the world resting, waiting for dawn. And somewhere in that patience, you find peace. A fragile, ancient peace that hums like the heartbeat of the castle itself. Tomorrow the fire will be lit again. The hall will glow. The voices will return. But for now, the world holds its breath. And you drift gently into sleep, wrapped in the cold grace of the medieval night. The night has deepened. The sound of the guards' boots fades beneath the slow rhythm of the wind brushing against the walls. You lie still beneath the coarse wool blankets, listening to the old timbers creak above you. The air is cold, almost sharp, and every breath feels like a conversation with the darkness. Yet in this silence, something inside you stirs a longing for warmth, not only of the body but of the heart. You rise, light the small lamp by your bedside, and look around the chamber once more, as if discovering it anew through the glow of flickering flame. The lamp's flame quivers and throws trembling shadows against the walls. Everything here, from the carved bedposts to the woven rug beneath your feet, tells a story of adaptation, the quiet ingenuity of those who refuse to yield to the cold. You draw back the heavy bed curtains, their thick folds muffling the world beyond. The fabric is coarse, dyed a deep shade of faded crimson. Its edges stiffened with age. It smells faintly of smoke and sheep's wool. And when you brush your hand across it, a fine layer of dust stirs, glowing gold in the lamplight. This bed is more than a place to sleep. It is a fortress within the fortress, a small sanctuary where warmth can be guarded like treasure. The people of this age built their beds not merely for comfort, but for survival. Each curtain drawn was a shield against drafts. Each layer of cloth a wall between skin and stone. The bed, once enclosed, held a different world inside it. Quieter, smaller, softer, a cocoon of breath and body heat suspended within the endless chill of the castle night. You sit again on the edge of the mattress and run your hands along the coverlet. Beneath the woolen blanket lies a second one, heavier, rougher. And beneath that, an old fur spread thick with the musky scent of time. The straw mattress sighs as you press down, releasing a faint whisper, the rustle of dry grass long harvested from summer fields. You imagine the people who prepared this bed earlier in the day, the maid beating the straw to loosen the clumps, the housekeeper smoothing the sheets with careful hands. The small coal pan slid beneath the covers to chase away the first sting of the night's cold. It was a ritual, this making of the bed, a slow ceremony performed with the seriousness of prayer. Every fold mattered, every blanket layered just so, every corner tucked tight, for the difference between warmth and shivering was often the difference between waking and never waking again. You move closer to the hearth. A few embers remain from earlier, glowing faintly like eyes half closed in slumber. Beside it rests an iron warming pan, its lid round and pierced with tiny star-shaped holes. You pick it up by its long handle and feel its surprising weight. Centuries ago, a servant would have filled it with hot coals from the fire, then slipped it carefully between the sheets, guiding it back and forth to spread the warmth. The air inside the bed would glow gently, the smell of iron and ash mingling with the scent of linen. By the time the master or mistress climbed in, the heat would have faded to a tender memory, just enough to soften the chill, but never to last until morning. How tenderly human this act feels. The desire to prepare warmth for someone else, to leave behind a trace of comfort before retreating into one's own cold corner of the night. Even now, centuries later, the thought lingers in the air like a kindness that never truly dies. You lift your gaze to the canopy above. The ceiling of the bed is low, enclosing, and somehow protective. The small oil lamp beside you paints it with trembling light, and for a moment it feels like you are inside a tent, or perhaps inside a dream. The curtains close the world away, leaving you alone with the gentle sound of your breathing. It's easy to imagine the person who once slept here, perhaps a noblewoman, her hands cracked from winter air, her hair braided loosely beneath a linen cap. She would slip into the bed cautiously, careful not to let in too much cold, drawing the curtains tight with one practiced motion. Beneath the fur and blankets, her body would relax by degrees. First her shoulders, then her fingers, then her eyelids, until sleep finally claimed her. Around her the castle might creak and groan, the wind might howl through the tower gaps, but within her little bed fortress, she would be safe. For the poor things were different, yet not without their own beauty. Their blankets were patched and worn, their bedding made of straw and rags, sometimes shared by 3 or 4 to save warmth. But they too learned the same secret, that warmth was not simply made of fire. It was made of closeness, of breathing, the same air, of hearing another heartbeat beside you, of trusting the night to pass, if only you faced it together. You pull the blanket higher, feeling its weight settle across your chest. The air between your body and the fabric begins to warm slowly but surely, a tiny victory over the cold. Your fingers trace the coarse weave of the wool, rough but comforting in its texture. There's something grounding in this simplicity. Hum of heaters, no glow of screens, only the rhythm of breath, the faint crackle of fire, the steady patience of stone. Outside the curtains, the world feels distant, muted. The wind rattles faintly at the shuttered window, but it no longer frightens you. Instead, it feels like part of a larger harmony. The castle breathing the night, watching the fire, whispering in its sleep. Here in your cocoon of cloth and warmth, time itself seems to slow. You think of how many people across the centuries have lain beneath blankets like these. Warriors, widows, scribes, and servants, all drawn together by the same simple need to be warm, to rest, to dream. Their names are gone, but their breath lingers in every fiber, their yearning woven into every thread. The curtain you hold between your fingers has witnessed lifetimes of sleep and survival. You close your eyes. The lamp beside you gutters softly, its flame shrinking lower, until only a small golden glow remains, the pulse of a world caught between waking and dreaming. You take a deep breath, and the scent of wool, smoke, and old wood fills your lungs. It is not unpleasant. It is human. It is his history. As the warmth gathers slowly around you, the curtain brushes your cheek, and the faint hum of the castle settles once more into silence. You sink deeper into the bed's embrace, feeling the centuries fold quietly around you. The chill outside still reigns over the stone halls, but within these thick curtains you've found a kingdom of your own, built not of power, but of peace. Tomorrow the fire will need to be rekindled, the blankets shaken, the straw renewed. But for now, you are safe, enveloped by the art of keeping warm, the oldest, gentlest wisdom humanity ever learned. And in that warmth, sleep comes easily, like the soft closing of a long-forgotten door. The warmth inside the curtains has softened you like wax touched by flame. The night no longer feels like an enemy, but a living presence humming just beyond the folds of fabric. You hear faint sounds, the wind sighing, the slow creak of the rafters, and something else, the gentle breathing of others. Somewhere nearby, perhaps in another room, or behind another curtain, people are also wrapped in their blankets, sharing their heat with one another, building small pockets of survival against the vast winter outside. And as you listen, you begin to understand warmth is not only fire, it is company. The medieval night was rarely solitary. For most, sleep was a shared ritual, a quiet gathering beneath layers of cloth and breath. The bed was not only furniture, it was a meeting place of lives, family, servants, travelers, and sometimes even animals. It was where fear was softened, where warmth was built by nearness, where dreams brushed against one another in the dark. You draw back the heavy curtain and feel the draft rush in. The air outside your bed fortress bites instantly, a sharp reminder of how fragile comfort truly is. In the dim glow of the lamp, you imagine the others, a chambermaid settling down on a straw pallet beside the door. A hound curled at the foot of the bed, its fur thick and warm, its sigh deep and contented. Together they make the night bearable, each body a small fire of its own. It might seem strange to modern ears, the thought of sharing a bed with others, of sleeping shoulder to shoulder in such closeness, but in those ancient winters, solitude was a luxury few could afford. The cold was relentless, seeping through walls, doors, even dreams. And so people turned to the simplest, oldest medicine, each other. Imagine a child nestled between parents, their small body absorbing the warmth of two hearts. The child's breath quickens, then steadies, syncing with the rhythm of the adults beside them. The family becomes a single breathing organism, a quiet constellation of trust and tenderness glowing beneath the covers. Outside, the snow might pile against the shutters, but inside there is a different kind of weather, a climate made of love, endurance, and the soft whisper of belonging. In grander chambers, even nobles were not always alone. A lady might sleep with her maid nearby, the soft sound of the servant's breathing, a comfort against the wide emptiness of the room. Sometimes travelers were offered the same bed in an inn or guest hall, strangers who lay down back to back in polite silence. To refuse such closeness would have been foolish, even rude. To share warmth was to share humanity. And then, of course, there were the dogs, loyal companions of the hearth and bed. The hounds were not simply pets. They were living, breathing heaters, welcome under the covers on the coldest nights. Their steady weight at the feet of the bed brought reassurance. A saying was born from this truth: a 3-dog night. It meant a night so cold that one needed 3 dogs beside them just to make it through till dawn. You glance toward the foot of your own bed, and for a moment in imagination, you see them there, great dogs with kind eyes curled tight in slumber, their bodies rising and falling with slow, peaceful breaths. Their presence fills the chamber with a sense of quiet guardianship, as though nothing bad could happen while they sleep beside you. The idea of shared warmth carries a deeper meaning, one not just of temperature, but of trust. To sleep near another person is to surrender, to give them your stillness, your unguarded self. In a world where darkness could hide so many dangers, this was the most human act of faith. And perhaps that is why, when they prayed before sleep, people often asked for protection not only from the cold, but from loneliness. The night stretches on. Somewhere in the castle, a distant cough echoes, followed by the faint clatter of wood shifting in the hearth. You close your eyes and picture the layers of life stacked throughout the fortress. The guards pacing the ramparts above the servants, huddled in the kitchens below the noble family, dreaming behind their curtains, and the dogs sleeping in quiet circles near the fire. Each of them is connected by something unseen, the same wind, the same cold, the same fragile hope for morning. The more you think of it, the more this world feels less like a cold prison and more like a single vast body. The castle is a giant organism made of warmths and breaths, where every person is a vital heartbeat. In such closeness, people learn the language of silence. They learn to share space without words, to find comfort in rhythm instead of speech. You shift beneath your blanket and feel the phantom press of another's presence beside you, not intrusive but reassuring, like the ghost of an old comfort. The air between the sheets feels warmer, heavier, alive. And for a moment, you can almost believe you are part of something larger than yourself. Some quiet network of souls linked through time, all learning the same lesson, that to survive the night, we must share the light we carry within. Outside the curtain, the world continues its long, slow breathing. The wind rises, rattles, then fades. The fire in the corner hums softly, glowing with the color of molten amber. The dog, yes, you imagine him there, still stirs, once shifts his paws and settles again with a sigh. The sound is so tender, so full of trust, that your own muscles relax in sympathy. Somewhere beyond this room, snow may be falling. Somewhere the stars may be burning cold above the tower's edge. But here in this small pocket of human and animal warmth, the cold has been tamed. It waits outside, patient but defeated for now. Inside, only the hush of sleep remains, a peace deeper than silence, older than time. You take one last breath before letting go of wakefulness. The curtain moves slightly with the rhythm of your breath, the fabric brushing your face like a gentle hand. You hear nothing now but the steady, comforting sound of breathing yours and the imagined others. And as you drift towards sleep, you understand that what has kept humanity alive through every frozen century is not just the fire of wood or stone, but the fire of one another, the miracle of shared warmth. In that ancient truth, as simple as breath itself, you finally surrender to rest. The night grows quieter now. The slow rhythm of shared breathing fades into stillness, and the fire's last glow softens into a dull red sigh. The warmth of company still lingers like perfume in the air, a memory of laughter, closeness, and the gentle weight of another body beside you. But not everyone in the medieval world slept within stone walls or under carved canopies. Beyond the castle's high windows, beyond its tapestries and velvet curtains, there were humbler homes where warmth was built differently, not with grandeur, but with togetherness. Step outside the castle walls in your mind, past the frozen moat, and into the open countryside. The snow crunches softly under your boots, and the air smells of smoke and pine. In the distance, a faint orange glow flickers through the trees. Not the proud blaze of a noble hearth, but a modest fire burning in a small cottage. Draw closer, and you'll see it, a low-roofed house of timber and clay. Its thatched roof dusted with frost, a thin thread of smoke curling into the dark sky. Inside it is nothing like the cold, echoing chambers of the castle. Here, warmth has a different language. The air is thick with scent, wood smoke, earth hay, and the faint sweetness of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. A single fire burns in the open hearth, its light painting the faces of a family gathered close. A mother sits near the flames, her hands red from the day's work, stirring a pot of soup that hisses and bubbles with the scent of onions and barley. A child leans against her knee, half asleep, while a small brown dog curls on the floor, its tail flicking in dreams. There is no luxury here, no curtains to draw, no feather-stuffed mattress. The bed is a pile of straw, covered with a rough blanket shared by many. Yet somehow it feels warmer, not in temperature perhaps, but in spirit. The fire glows brighter because it burns for everyone. The air hums not with silence, but with life. The crackle of the wood, the soft murmur of voices, the clatter of a wooden spoon against an iron pot. The father returns from the cold, his boots heavy with mud and snow. He hangs his cloak near the fire, steam rising from its damp folds. The family looks up, smiles, shifts closer to make room. He sits with a weary sigh, hands outstretched toward the flame. For a moment, no one speaks. They simply breathe together, a rhythm of peace that feels sacred in its simplicity. You can feel the warmth radiating from this small hearth, not only as heat, but as gratitude. The walls, patched with clay and straw, keep out the worst of the wind. The thatch above groans softly, but holds. The family knows every crack, every stone, every spot where the fire smokes too much, and they love it all because it is theirs. The children are sent to bed first. They crawl into the straw corner, giggling, wrapping themselves in a shared blanket that smells faintly of hay and sleep. Their mother hums a tune as she banks the fire, covering the coals with ash, so they will smolder till morning. The father adds one last log, then lies down beside her on the bench, the heat from the hearth brushing their faces like a blessing. In this tiny world, warmth is not something owned. It is something made shared and kept alive. The poor know it better than anyone that comfort is not born from plenty, but from presence. A hand held near the fire, a voice in the dark, a promise that even in the coldest night, no one sleeps alone. You imagine lying down beside that same hearth. The straw rustles beneath you. The smoke curls lazily toward the ceiling, finding its way out through the hole in the roof. The air is heavy with the smell of ash wood and wool, and you can hear the breathing of the family around you, steady, slow, each breath blending into the next. Outside, the wind howls across the open fields, but inside the warmth feels alive, almost human, as though the cottage itself were a living creature sheltering its children beneath its wooden ribs. And there is beauty in this smallness. Here, the night does not stretch endlessly like it does in a castle. It presses close, wrapping around the walls like another blanket. You can almost feel it breathing with you, its darkness softened by the pulse of the fire and the tender noise of sleep. Sometimes the poor even brought their animals inside at night. Goats, sheep, a cow or two, not out of sentiment, but necessity. Their warmth added to the families their quiet, chewing a lullaby of sorts. A soft, earthy symphony of survival. Imagine waking in the middle of the night to the faint sound of a cow shifting in her stall, or the gentle bleat of a lamb half dreaming. It was a comfort, a reminder that life went on even in the darkest hours. And when morning came, the first act was always the same: revive the fire. The mother would rise before dawn, her breath misting in the cold air, and stir the ashes for the last ember. She would blow on it gently, whispering to it as if coaxing a child awake. When the spark caught and the flames rose again, it was a victory, quiet, humble, but deeply human. Another day had begun, another night survived. There is something profoundly tender in their endurance. The poor did not curse the cold. They lived with it, learned its moods, and found beauty in its persistence. They trusted the small things, straw, wool, breath, flame, to carry them through. And maybe that's the truest warmth of all, not the heat that burns, but the one that endures. Back in your imagination, you stand once more at the cottage door. The firelight spills across the snow, painting the night in shades of gold and gray. Behind you, the family sleeps soundly. Ahead, the castle looms distant and dark, its towers rising like frozen fingers into the star-filled sky. And as you turn toward it, ready to return to its cold stone heart, you realize something: that warmth does not belong to the rich or the poor, to palaces or to cottages. It lives wherever love and care take root. So you walk on through the snow, the sound of your footsteps muffled by the white hush of winter, carrying with you the quiet lesson of that humble hearth, that even the smallest flame, when shared, can hold back the longest night. You leave behind the humble cottage, its warm glow still flickering in your memory. Outside, the air feels sharper, now cleaner and full of sound: the whisper of wind across the fields, the crunch of frost beneath your boots, the sighing hum of the world wrapped in ice. As you walk back toward the looming outline of the castle, you think of the families sleeping together in small rooms, their breath mingling with the smoke of their hearths. And then you look up to the tower windows of the fortress above, dark and silent, where even the richest among them must still face the same ancient visitor that comes with every winter night: the wind. Inside the castle, the air is different still, yet restless. The moment you step through the wooden doors, you can hear the wind moving through the cracks, weaving its ghostly fingers through the corridors. It's not a violent wind, not tonight. It moves like a whisper, curious, persistent, slipping through narrow arrow slits and around the edges of unsealed windows. Its song is not angry, but mournful, the quiet voice of a season that will not be ignored. You climb the narrow stairs again, the walls trembling faintly with each distant gust. The torches flicker, their flames bend toward the direction of the unseen current, as if bowing to it. When you reach the corridor near your chamber, you notice a faint movement, the edges of an old tapestry lifting, breathing with the rhythm of the wind. The air smells faintly of damp wool and ash, and there is a chill that feels almost intelligent, as though the castle itself is aware of you. You pause near the window slit, a long, narrow gap carved deep into the wall. It was made for arrows once, not for comfort. And though someone has stretched oiled parchment across it to block the drafts, the material flutters like the thin skin of a drum. The sound is delicate, almost musical, a trembling that fills the silence like a heartbeat. You touch the edge of the stone frame and it feels slick with moisture. Tiny beads of condensation glisten in the lamplight, catching the pale reflection of the moon. You can see her now, the moon hanging low and swollen above the courtyard, painting the snow in shades of silver and white blue. Her light slides through the narrow slit and falls across the floor of your room, a soft, cold ribbon that stretches to the foot of your bed. You watch the way it trembles, broken by the restless air, and for a moment you think of how strange it is that beauty and coldness so often arrive together. The medieval builders knew that no wall, however thick, could completely silence the night. The wind always found its way in through chimney flues, beneath doors, between stones, bringing with it the raw reminder of the world beyond human reach. In a way, it was like time itself. It slipped in quietly, unseen, reminding those inside that they were small. You draw closer to the window and rest your forehead lightly against the stone. It's freezing to the touch. Outside, you hear the sigh of the trees beyond the castle walls, bending and shivering in the gusts. The world feels distant and near all at once. Somewhere below, a shutter slams, followed by the muffled curse of a guard on patrol. The sound fades quickly, swallowed by the vast stillness. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders and listen. The tapestry beside the bed continues to rustle, the sound soft but constant. You can almost imagine it speaking, the murmur of forgotten weavers, the laughter of those who once sat before it on warmer days. Each gust of wind brings their voices back for a heartbeat, only to scatter them again into silence. There is something deeply human about this struggle against the cold, the endless effort to seal, to block, to insulate, knowing that no matter how many layers are hung or stones fitted, the world outside will always find its way in. And yet perhaps that is part of the quiet beauty of it, the reminder that nature cannot be fully kept out, that it insists on being heard. The lamp beside your bed flutters as the draft slips across the wick. Shadows dance across the ceiling like waves of dark water. The flame steadies again, but you can feel the air changing, thinner, sharper. You take a deep breath and it fills your lungs with something electric, something that wakes the mind even as it chills the skin. It's a reminder that you're alive, that the same wind brushing your cheek now once touched the faces of countless others who stood in this very room centuries ago. You think of them, the men and women who once battled this same wind with curtains and candles, who pressed rags into the cracks of windows, who prayed that their fires would not die before dawn. You imagine their whispers in the dark, their small prayers, their laughter, as they joked about the cold to make it more bearable. They too must have listened to this same sound, the sighing wind threading through the corridors like a voice from another world. For a moment, the draft grows stronger, lifting a few loose strands of your hair. It brushes your face like a cold, invisible hand, not cruel, but strangely intimate. As if the night itself were curious about you, wanting to know the shape of your breath, the sound of your heart. You smile faintly at the thought. Perhaps this is what it means to live in a world so exposed, to learn not to fight the elements, but to coexist with them. You step back and pull the curtain across the window. The sound of the wind softens, immediately muffled, but not silenced. You can still feel it pressing faintly against the fabric, insistent, alive. It's almost comforting now, like a lullaby played on invisible strings. You return to your bed, the air heavy with the scent of wool and wax. As you lie down, the moonlight seeps dimly through the curtain, painting the room in faint silver. The wind hums softly on the other side of the wall, tracing its eternal path around the castle towers. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of it carry you, the rise and fall, the whisper and the pause. It sounds like breathing, like the ancient pulse of the earth itself. And in that sound you find no menace, only companionship. The wind, the cold, the flickering flame, they are not enemies, only reminders that life exists in contrast. Without the cold, warmth would mean nothing. Without the silence, the crackle of fire would not comfort. Without the darkness, no one would marvel at light. So you let the night continue its song. You let the wind whisper through the walls, and the moon trace her silver path across your dreams. Somewhere beyond, in cottages and towers alike, others are listening too. And together in the hush between gusts, the whole sleeping world breathes as one. The night has not moved far. You can still hear the wind threading through cracks and corridors, humming its cold hymn to the stones. But somewhere beneath that restless breath, a softer sound begins to rise, the low, steady sigh of burning wood. The faint glow returns golden and alive, seeping out from a nearby chamber, where someone has tended the fire through the long hours. You follow that light as one might follow a memory, and soon the cold blue of the moon gives way to the warm orange heart of human survival, the fire. It greets you before you see it. The smell of wood smoke clings to the air, thick and earthy, carrying with it the history of everything it has ever touched. Forests, hands, breath, time itself. You step into the chamber, and there it is, the hearth. The fire has burned for hours, maybe all night. Yet still it pulses red and gold, alive with a kind of weary strength. It feels ancient, almost conscious, a creature tamed, but never truly owned. You draw close, kneeling to warm your hands. The stones around the hearth radiate a comforting heat, like the skin of something vast and kind. The crackle of the logs is hypnotic, each snap and hiss, a reminder of life hidden within death. What was once a tree now offers its final gift, warmth. And yet, even as you bask in its glow, you notice the cost. The air in the room is thick with smoke, its taste bitter on the back of your tongue. The walls above the hearth are stained black, the ceiling darkened by years of soot. Every fire in every medieval home carried this double truth: the power to save and the power to suffocate. The people of that time accepted both. They lived in the company of smoke, their lungs filled with it, their clothes marked by its scent. It was the perfume of endurance. They knew that comfort demanded sacrifice, that warmth could never be separated from the scars it left behind. The fire gave, but it also took airwood labor time. Every spark was a transaction between man and nature, a fragile truce that had to be renewed each day. You lean closer, feeling the heat on your face, your eyelids heavy from the dance of the flames. It's almost like looking into a memory-moving light that seems to whisper stories without words. You can understand now why people once built their lives around this small sun. It wasn't just warmth they sought, but company. The fire was the first companion, the first listener. It was where they told their tales, whispered their fears, prayed their prayers. Imagine the family gathered here after supper. The father, his face lined with work and wisdom, stirs the coals with an iron poker. The mother mends a tear in a woolen cloak, her fingers moving with tired patience. The children sit cross-legged on the floor, tracing patterns in the ash or poking at the logs with sticks, their laughter soft but alive. Above them, the smoke curls upward, finding its slow path through the hole in the roof. Outside, the wind screams, but here, the world holds steady. Still, this warmth is never perfect. The fire must be tended constantly, watched over like a fragile heart. If neglected, it dies quickly, leaving only cold ash and silence. You can picture the panic of a family waking in the night to find the hearth cold, the rush to strike flint against steel, the breath blown into a stubborn ember, the whispered plea for it to catch again. Fire was never something to be taken for granted. It was always a small miracle reborn each morning. Your eyes wander to the corners of the room, where the light fades into shadow. You see the marks of smoke everywhere on the ceiling beams, on the rough stone, on the faces of those who lived here. They carried that black dust with them like a kind of invisible badge proof that they had survived another winter. The smell never left their hair or clothes, and yet ask them if they would trade it for the cold, and they would laugh. The smoke was a price, gladly paid. There is a peculiar comfort in imperfection, isn't there? The fire never burned cleanly. The air was never pure, yet somehow the heart was soothed by its light. The glow of it turned even the roughest room into a place of holiness. Perhaps that's why across the centuries we still build fires in our hearths, in our candles, in our hearts. We still gather around light, needing to remember that warmth is worth the blemish it leaves behind. You reach out a hand toward the flame, feeling the pulse of heat against your palm. For a moment, you imagine every fire that has ever burned in human history, millions of small suns flickering across time, each one keeping someone alive, each one whispering the same promise. You are not alone. The smoke may sting, the heat may fade, but the fire remains the oldest form of hope. The wind outside has quieted. The castle seems to listen. You can almost hear the echo of centuries of voices rising in this same light, songs sung to the crackle of wood, prayers murmured as shadows played on the wall. The smell of smoke binds you to them, a bridge between the living and the long gone. The same warmth that touches your fingers once touched theirs. The same light that shines in your eyes once shone in theirs. As the fire burns lower, the room begins to darken again. The logs collapse inward, sending a soft cloud of ash into the air. The embers glow like sleeping eyes, their light dim but steady. You sit still, unwilling to move, unwilling to let the moment end. The heat against your face feels softer now, more intimate, like a lullaby. You close your eyes and breathe in the smoke, letting it sting just enough to remind you that you are alive. The warmth settles deeper beneath the skin, into something wordless and eternal. The fire murmurs quietly, its sound merging with the distant sigh of the wind outside. And in that fragile harmony between heat and cold, between flame and smoke, between presence and memory, you understand what the people of long ago must have felt. Not just comfort, not just relief, but reverence. They were not masters of the fire, they were its companions. They fed it, and in return it kept them alive. As you drift closer to sleep, the firelight flickers one last time across your face, painting your closed eyelids in gold. The smoke swirls upward, carrying with it 1,000 invisible prayers. And as the night deepens once more, you rest, knowing that every spark that ever burned in castles, in cottages, in lonely hearts was born of the same longing to turn darkness into light and cold into love. The fire has burned low, its last breaths soft and glowing, fading into quiet embers. Smoke drifts lazily upward, curling into the beams of the ceiling like the memory of a prayer. The room grows dim again, but not completely dark. A faint light still lingers, softer and steadier than flame, the glow of candles scattered along the room's edges. They tremble in the draft, like delicate stars holding back the night with their fragile golden courage. You move closer, drawn to their calm, to their silence that feels alive. A candle is such a small thing, just wax and wick, and yet, in this world of stone and shadow, it is everything. You kneel beside one now, watching its steady flame bend and sway, the wax pooling slowly at its base like melted gold. The light doesn't shout like fire does. It whispers. It breathes gently, speaking in the quiet language of patience. Where the hearth is alive with drama and sound, the candle is humble, the faithful companion of solitude. In the medieval night, candles were precious. Each one was a measure of wealth, time, and craft. The poor might burn rushlights, reeds dipped in fat that hissed and sputtered. But here in this room, the candles are made of beeswax. Their scent fills the air with faint sweetness, the ghost of summer fields where bees once gathered nectar. The light they give is soft, pure, almost sacred. When it touches the walls, it doesn't erase the darkness it partners with, it painting the room in gentle layers of shadow and warmth. You lift your eyes and see how the candlelight transforms the world around you. The coarse stone glows as if alive. The iron fittings on the door gleam like gold. Even the smoke from the dying fire catches the light and dances through it, turning gray into silver. The flicker of the flame feels like breathing a rhythm that soothes rather than startles. You can understand why people once believed that every candle held a spirit, a small guardian against the night. For centuries, these tiny flames marked the hours. Before clocks, before the ticking of gears, there was only this slow melting of wax, this patient burning away of time. A candle could measure the length of a prayer, the span of a story, the distance between wakefulness and sleep. When the wick finally bent and vanished into its own pool of light, the night grew deeper, not frightening, but final, a gentle nudge toward rest. You walk slowly around the room, your hand hovering near the candles, as though greeting old friends. Their warmth radiates softly against your skin, tender but real. Each one burns at a different height. One nearly new one half gone, another shivering at the edge of exhaustion. Together, they create a constellation. Small suns born not of firewood, but of faith. You can almost imagine monks in their stone cloisters lighting similar candles, their faces bowed over manuscripts, the wax dripping onto pages as they copied the words of eternity. For them, too, light was prayer. Every spark was a gesture of devotion, a bridge between human hands and divine presence. In the stillness of night, the candle's flame became a symbol of endurance, of the soul's quiet defiance against despair. Even the act of lighting one was sacred. A breath offered a spark accepted. And when the wind threatened to extinguish it, the hand that shielded it became part of the ritual. To protect a flame was to protect hope itself. You sit now on the wooden stool near the table. A small cluster of candles burns before you. Their flames reflect in your eyes, soft and rhythmic. You notice how the light changes everything it touches, how it makes even the simplest objects seem meaningful. A brass cup gleams with warmth. A book's edges shimmer. The folds of a discarded cloak become deep valleys of gold and brown. Light has a way of forgiving things, of softening their imperfections. Perhaps that is why people have always sought it, not to see more clearly, but to see more kindly. The air around you hums with quiet peace. The wind still moves faintly beyond the window, but its voice is muted now, respectful. The castle seems to breathe slower, as if it too is resting in the candlelight. You can almost hear the heartbeat of the place, the creak of the beams, the faint drip of melting wax, the distant rustle of sleeping life. You lean forward and blow gently on one of the candles. The flame bends, flutters, and goes out with a sigh. A thin trail of smoke curls upward, silver in the dim light before fading into nothing. The scent of it lingers, sweet, a little sad, like the last note of a lullaby. The remaining candles burn on their flames, steadier now, as though aware of their quiet duty to keep the darkness kind. It's strange, isn't it, how something so small can feel eternal? A candle lasts only hours, yet in that brief time it becomes witness to everything: laughter, prayer, silence, sleep. It burns itself away so that others might rest easier. And maybe that is the truest form of peace, to give light without demand to fade. Gently leaving behind warmth rather than ash. You rest your chin on your hands, letting your eyes soften with the flicker of the flames. The room blurs into a golden haze, the edges of the world dissolving. In the trembling candlelight, the walls of the castle seem to breathe. The shadows sway like tired angels, and the night, for once, feels kind. As sleep approaches, the glow begins to merge with your dreams, soft ribbons of light curling through the dark. You imagine them stretching through corridors and stairways, reaching every lonely corner of the castle, touching the faces of those asleep, blessing them with its quiet grace. The light becomes a language that needs no words. A promise whispered through time: you are safe, you are seen, you are warm. One by one, the candles will melt away. Their flames will lower, then disappear, leaving small pools of wax as proof they were ever here. But their light, their memory will remain held in the eyes of all who saw it carried forward into every new dawn. And so, as your thoughts begin to drift, you give yourself to the same calm rhythm. You breathe in the sweet scent of wax and smoke, and breathe out your last waking thought, that perhaps the world does not need to be bright to be beautiful. It only needs to be gentle. And tonight, under the hush of ancient stone, the candles have given you that gift. The candles burn lower now, their small flames shrinking into pools of trembling light. The air is soft, with the scent of wax and smoke, and, for a long while you sit there in stillness watching the room dissolve into quiet gold. One by one, the wicks grow faint. Shadows stretch, fold, and settle over the stone walls like a heavy cloak. The night has reached its deepest hour, the moment when everything, even time itself, seems to hold its breath. Yet through the hush of darkness you hear something else, the faint murmur of life beyond your door. The sound of many people breathing, dreaming, existing together beneath the same roof. It is not loneliness you feel now, but belonging. In the medieval world, sleep was never just an act of rest. It was a communion. People did not slumber in solitude, but in company, surrounded by the rhythm of other hearts and the steady song of breath. Step now into the great dormitory of a monastery, or the long barracks of soldiers, or the servants' quarters beneath the castle stairs. Everywhere the air hums with the quiet music of togetherness. You open the heavy wooden door and step into the chamber. The room is vast, yet dim, its shape barely defined by the faint orange glow of a single ember burning at the hearth. Beds line the walls, simple wooden frames or straw pallets laid upon the floor. Dozens of figures lie there wrapped in coarse blankets, their faces half hidden, their bodies curled toward the warmth of one another. The sound that fills the room is not silence, but a kind of harmony. Sighs, murmurs, the occasional turn of a restless sleeper. It feels ancient and deeply human, the sound of survival through shared stillness. You walk softly between the beds, the straw crunching beneath your steps. The air is thick with the scent of humanity, smoke, wool, sweat, and dreams, but it's not unpleasant. It smells of life, lived close without walls between hearts. Here, warmth is not made of fire or cloth. It is made of presence. At the far end of the room, a monk stirs his habit, rustling softly as he adjusts his blanket. Beside him another murmurs a prayer in half-sleep, his lips barely moving. You pause, listening. The words are not meant for you, but they reach you nonetheless, a simple plea for peace, for the safety of all souls through the long dark. In that moment you understand something the modern world often forgets, that prayer and sleep are not so different. Both are acts of surrender. Both require trust. In one corner of the room, a dog lies curled at the feet of a soldier, its head resting on the man's boots. The soldier's face is weathered even in rest. His armor lies stacked beside the bed, the metal glinting faintly in the low light. A faint snore escapes him, but the dog's breathing matches his own, steady and sure. They have fought through storms together, marched through mud and blood, and now they rest, two souls joined not by speech, but by silence. The simplicity of it moves you. There's something profoundly peaceful in this closeness, the unspoken trust it demands. To share sleep is to share vulnerability. It means believing that those around you will guard your safety while you drift into dreams. In this great room, everyone depends on everyone else. The firekeeper at the hearth stays awake to tend the coals. The guards at the gate watch through the night. The sleepers, though unaware, lend their quiet faith to the keeping of the whole. You find an empty cot near the window and sit down. The wood creaks beneath you, a sound both fragile and grounding. Outside, the wind sighs along the tower walls, but it cannot reach this warmth. Inside, you feel the weight of generations, how countless souls have slept this same way shoulder to shoulder, century after century. The poor and the noble alike found refuge in numbers, for loneliness was a luxury few could afford. The more you listen, the more you begin to hear the subtle variations in the chorus of breath, the sharp exhale of a dreamer lost in some distant memory, the slow rhythm of an elder whose years have softened into peace, the faint whimper of a child caught between waking and sleep. Each sound is a life, a story, a heartbeat woven into the great tapestry of night. And all of them together create something greater than rest. They create belonging. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you. It's not perfect. There are coughs, sighs, the occasional murmur of someone turning over, but that imperfection is part of the comfort. The night breathes through every body here, through every wall and rafter, through the very stones that cradle this place. The air feels warm with trust, as if centuries of human hope still linger in it, unwilling to leave. Somewhere nearby, a small voice whispers a prayer before drifting back to sleep. Keep us through the night, O Lord, until the morning comes. The words fade, but their meaning remains echoing softly in your chest. You think of how many nights have passed beneath this same roof, how many storms have raged beyond these walls, and yet inside the same ritual continues the lighting of fire, the sharing of warmth, the closing of eyes in quiet faith. You imagine yourself lying down now, your head on a straw pillow, your hands folded loosely against your chest. The blanket is rough but heavy, the kind that holds you to the earth. The air hums gently around you, filled with the pulse of human nearness. Somewhere the dog shifts and sighs. The monk murmurs another line of prayer. The soldier dreams of sunlight. And you simply breathe. Sleep in this moment feels less like escape and more like communion. The world narrows to the sound of hearts and lungs, the faint crackle of coals, the soft whisper of breath against linen. The night outside remains vast and cold, but within these walls there is warmth enough to hold it back. Before your mind drifts entirely, you think one last thought, that this closeness, this unspoken unity, might be the truest kind of peace humanity has ever known. To rest not in isolation, but in trust. To know that even in the darkest hour you are surrounded by life, by warmth, by the steady rhythm of others dreaming beside you. And as you surrender to sleep, the sounds of the shared night blend into something timeless. A hymn of survival, soft and unending, that carries every soul in the room through till dawn. The room full of sleepers has fallen utterly still. The last log on the hearth has collapsed into a soft mound of glowing ash, and only the faintest hum of breath fills the darkness. You lie there, eyes half open, listening to the rhythm of so many hearts beating in unison. For a long while there is nothing but peace. But in time, as the fire's glow fades and the chill returns, you sense a change not in sound but in time itself. The night seems to shift, to breathe again. Someone stirs. A few voices whisper. It is not dawn yet, not even close. This is the hidden hour, the secret between sleeps. In the world of the Middle Ages, sleep was not a single stretch of rest as it is today. It came in two halves, two tender sacred chapters divided by a gentle pause. The first sleep began soon after dusk, when bodies sank into exhaustion and minds drifted into dreams. Then, sometime around midnight, as the fire dimmed and the world turned in its slow silence, people would wake calm, unhurried, and half-dreaming still. This watch between sleeps was neither night nor morning. It was a twilight of the soul, a space for thought, prayer, or quiet company. You rise from your straw bed, the blanket slipping from your shoulders. The air greets you cool but not biting. Around you others remain asleep, their faces softened by the glow of the embers. You step carefully across the floor, your bare feet brushing against the cold stone. A few others are awake, two silent shapes moving softly, rekindling small fires, or whispering prayers into the still air. The castle at this hour feels different, almost holy. It is as though time itself has loosened its grip. The wind has fallen. The torches in the hallway burn low, and the night stands perfectly still, like water in a deep well. You can hear distant sounds, the creak of beams settling, the faint drip of water somewhere in the walls. But they are not intrusions. They are reminders that the world is alive, even in its quietest hours. You walk toward the narrow window slit and pull the small curtain aside. Outside, the stars shimmer in a dark ocean sky. The moon hangs low, and its light pours through the opening, washing over your face like cool silk. The courtyard below lies empty, except for a single guard making his rounds, his lantern a small point of moving gold. You watch him pause, lift his head toward the heavens, and for a moment you sense that he too feels what you do. That strange, peaceful ache that lives between wakefulness and sleep. You return to the hearth and kneel beside it. The coals glow faintly like sleeping eyes. With a small iron poker, you stir them gently. A red pulse awakens beneath the ash, and you add a few dry twigs, listening to the first quiet crackle. The light returns soft and amber, spreading across the stone floor. You hold your hands near it, feeling warmth bloom in your palms. In this half hour of the night, even the smallest flame feels sacred. It was in this in-between time that people once found room for their souls. Peasants might sit by the fire and mend tools or quietly talk to their families. Monks rose from their narrow beds to chant the midnight office, their voices rising like mist in the candlelit chapel. Lovers might whisper to one another in hushed tones. Others, more solitary, simply sat awake and thought about their dreams, their sorrows, their hopes for the morning. It was a time not of labor, but of reflection. The mind was unguarded, then open to mysteries too subtle for daylight. You can almost hear them now, faint echoes across centuries. A mother soothing her child back to sleep. A shepherd praying for calm weather. A scribe dipping his quill into ink by candlelight, capturing a thought that would vanish by dawn. These were the hours when the heart spoke most honestly, when the world was too quiet to lie. You lean back against the wall, and let your gaze drift into the fire. Your thoughts wander slow and drowsy. You think of how this rhythm, this twofold sleep felt more human somehow. There was no rush to chase the morning, no pressure to sleep straight through. Night was not an obstacle, it was a companion. The pause in the middle allowed people to breathe, to simply be. In the hush of that moment, life itself seemed to hold its breath, offering a rare stillness where one could meet the self without fear. Outside, a faint wind begins to stir again, brushing the window with a low sigh. The guard's lantern passes once more below your chamber, its light fading into shadow. You wonder what he thinks about during his rounds, perhaps his family, his faith, or simply the warmth of the sun he will soon see again. You imagine the monks in the abbey across the valley, their voices echoing through cold stone corridors as they sing the psalms. In the night watches I meditate on thee. Their song would carry through the darkness like a ribbon of light. You close your eyes, and for a moment you too feel part of that ancient rhythm awake, a dreaming present, yet adrift. You understand why people cherished this hour. It was a time to touch the divine without needing to reach for it, a time when silence itself felt like prayer. As the embers pulse brighter, you feel drowsiness return. You stand, stretch, and look around the room once more. Most of the others still sleep. Their faces glow faintly in the firelight, calm, trusting, untouched by the cold. The dog near the door stirs, yawns, then curls back into itself, sighing like a bellows. The sound makes you smile. The world feels close, again tender and familiar. You bank the fire, carefully covering the embers with a thin layer of ash to keep them alive until morning. Then you return to your bed, drawing the blanket up to your chin. The straw rustles beneath you, and as you close your eyes, you sense the night leaning closer, ready to cradle you once more. Sleep comes softly, like a friend returning. You drift through the thin veil between waking and dreaming, carried by the same rhythm that has held humanity for centuries. Two halves of rest, two halves of being. Somewhere in that stillness, a candle flickers out. A monk's voice fades into the last line of his hymn. The guard's lantern disappears behind a wall, and in the quiet that follows, the world folds itself back into darkness, waiting gently for dawn. The embers from the hearth still breathe faintly beneath their ash, glowing like buried rubies. Around you, sleep has returned in waves, soft, rhythmic, unbroken. The second sleep has begun, deeper than the first dream, heavy and still. Outside, the stars fade into the pale blue of dawn, though no one yet stirs to see it. The air is quiet in a different way now, not with the stillness of night, but with the waiting of morning. Somewhere far below, a rooster calls its voice, echoing faintly through the stone halls. The world, you realize, is preparing to wake. It begins almost imperceptibly, a slow shift in the color of the air, a thinning of the dark. You feel it before you see it, the faint warmth brushing across your face, the subtle softening of the room's silence. The castle, which all night had seemed carved from shadow and stone, begins to breathe again. In the upper corridor, a hinge creaks. Somewhere a bucket clinks against stone. The servants are stirring. The day, like a tide, has begun to rise. You open your eyes. For a moment, the world is all gray. The gentle gray of early light that makes every shape uncertain, every movement quiet. The sleeping forms around you shift and sigh, as if in answer to some distant call. You sit up slowly, the blanket sliding down your shoulders. The straw mattress rustles beneath you, the sound oddly comforting. It's the same sound that has marked the start of countless mornings before, humble, familiar, and human. The air still holds the faint scent of last night's fire smoke, wool, and warm breath mingled into something strangely sweet. You look toward the window. The curtain glows softly from behind, and when you pull it aside, the first light of dawn spills across the room. It's not yet bright, just a pale golden wash that touches everything gently, as if the sun itself is hesitant to disturb what's left of the dream. Outside, the courtyard stretches beneath a thin veil of frost. The well stands in its center rim, glittering in the new light. A stable boy crosses the yard, his breath a cloud, his footsteps crunching on the frozen ground. From the kitchen chimney, a single thread of smoke curls upward, promising warmth and the smell of bread to come. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls, once low, patient, reminding the castle that life begins again. You watch as dawn unfolds, slow and tender, spreading color like watercolor across the world. The snow, so pale moments ago, begins to shimmer faintly with pink. The rooftops blush with gold. Even the hard edges of the battlements soften their shadows, thinning under the caress of light. It's as if the entire world exhales the long, cold breath of night finally released. You rise and dress quietly. The fabric of your tunic feels cool against your skin. But the air no longer bites. The fire in the hearth has died completely now, leaving behind only a faint warmth in the stones. You kneel and touch the ashes, soft, as silk, gray as sleep. You think of how, only hours ago, this was flame alive and fierce. It reminds you of the night itself, how it burned so vividly with life, sound and memory, and how gently it now fades into day. As you move through the corridor, the castle greets you with its morning voice. Doors opening, footsteps, echoing whispers exchanged. The kitchen stirs with life. You can hear the rhythmic thud of dough against a wooden board, the clatter of ladles, the hiss of kindling catching flame. The smell of baking bread reaches you warm and rich, filling the air with something close to joy. In the great hall, servants sweep the floor, clearing away the ashes from last night's fire, readying the space for the day's life to begin again. You pause at the doorway of the hall. The morning light pours through the tall windows, transforming everything it touches. The same stones that felt cold and lifeless in the night now glow softly, their colors alive again, brown, gold, ivory. Dust motes swirl lazily in the beams of light, drifting like tiny worlds suspended in stillness. The place that once echoed with silence and shadows now feels kind, almost human. You imagine the noble family awakening upstairs, the rustle of fabric, the murmur of servants, the slow re-entry into consciousness. The lady of the house will soon descend for breakfast, her gown layered against the chill. The children will follow, still half dreaming, their hair tangled, their eyes bright. The Lord will speak in a low voice about the work of the day. The fields, the horses, the letters to be written. Yet beneath it all, there will remain a quiet gratitude that another night has passed safely, that the hearth still stands, and that the world has returned to light. You step closer to the hearth in the great hall, where the morning fire has just been rekindled. The flame is small, delicate, nothing like the roaring blaze of evening. It flickers shyly, warming the edges of the room with golden whispers. You crouch near it, feeling its gentle breath against your palms. For a moment, it feels as though the flame recognizes you, as though it remembers how you watched over its ancestors through the long, cold hours. The castle, fully awake now, hums with purpose. The stable doors creak open. The sound of hooves and the smell of hay drift in through the courtyard. Outside, the sun climbs higher, scattering frost into mist. The banners on the towers begin to stir in the breeze. And you, standing there, feel the strange comfort of being part of something ancient and enduring this daily resurrection, this slow unfurling of light over stone. You think back to the night, to the candles, the shared breath, the wind through the walls, and realize the dawn is not their opposite, but their completion. The day doesn't erase the night, it redeems it. Every hour of darkness, every flicker of flame, every whispered prayer and sigh of sleep, all of it has led here to this moment when light returns and the world opens its eyes again. You take a deep breath, the first true breath of morning. The air is crisp and new, yet filled with memory. It carries the scent of ash and bread, of wood and frost, the perfume of survival. You close your eyes and let it fill your lungs. For a heartbeat, you feel both the weight and the wonder of what it means to be alive in such a place, in such a time. When you open your eyes again, the hall is bathed in gold. The servants move quietly, the fire burns steady, and outside the first full ray of sunlight spills across the courtyard stones. Somewhere a child laughs. The sound echoes through the corridor like a small blessing. And as you stand there, you understand that the castle, for all its walls and history, has always been most alive, not in its grandeur, but in moments like this when night gives itself gently to day, and the fragile warmth of human life rises once more to meet the light. The sun has fully risen now, climbing over the towers and spreading its soft light across the courtyard. The castle, which only hours ago held its breath in darkness, now breathes freely again, alive with motion and sound. The scent of fresh bread drifts from the kitchens, mingling with the crisp morning air. Yet as you stand by the window, watching the frost melt into shining droplets, something in you hesitates. You realize how fragile this warmth truly is. For though day has returned, winter remains. The cold waits patiently, knowing it will reclaim the night. And so, to understand how people endured this endless cycle, you must step beyond these walls once more, out into the open world, where the cold was fiercest and the struggle most real. You step outside the great door of the castle and the air greets you like a blade. The light may be golden, but the chill beneath it is sharp and deep, cutting straight through your breath. The courtyard stones gleam with a thin glaze of ice that cracks softly underfoot. Every sound seems magnified: the clink of a bucket, the low snort of a horse, the distant cry of a raven circling above. The world feels emptied, stripped down to its purest elements: air, ice, and endurance. The winter landscape stretches before you, vast and silver. The trees along the distant hills are bare, their branches etched against the pale sky like veins. Frost clings to the fields, turning every blade of grass into crystal. The river that once sang below the bridge now lies still, its surface frozen smooth as glass. Yet even in this silence, There is movement, small, patient, persistent. Smoke rises from the cottages scattered beyond the walls, thin threads of life coiling upward toward heaven. You follow the narrow path leading away from the castle, your boots crunching on the frozen earth. The cold stings your cheeks and numbs your fingers despite the thick gloves. The world seems colorless at first, a painting made of gray and white. But as your eyes adjust, you begin to see its quiet beauty. The faint rose of sunlight on snow, the shimmer of frost along a fence, the dark warmth of a bird's wing flashing through the air. It is not a world of abundance, but of grace, found in scarcity. The village you reach is humble, almost hidden beneath the weight of winter. The cottages are small and low, their thatched roofs blanketed in white. Doors creak open and shut, and people move slowly wrapped in layers of wool and leather. Their faces are red from the cold, but their eyes are steady. A woman draws water from the well, her breath rising like incense. A man splits wood with a steady rhythm, the sound echoing against the still air. Even the children, their laughter muted by scarves and mittens, seem to understand the solemn pact of the season to survive. One must endure together. You stop near a cottage where a small window glows with orange light. Inside, through the wavering glass, you see a family gathered close around a fire. A pot hangs over the flames, steam curling from its rim. The mother stirs the soup slowly, her movements careful, reverent. The children sit cross-legged on the floor, their faces glowing red from the heat. The father mends a boot by the light of a single candle, his hands rough but gentle. They do not speak much. They don't need to. Every gesture is a conversation, every shared breath an unspoken prayer. There is no abundance here, no luxury, only enough. And yet that enough holds something greater than plenty. It holds gratitude. You watch the mother ladle out the meal-thin broth, perhaps a few roots, a scrap of meat, and you can feel the care in her movements. The bowls are placed in front of each child with tenderness, as though she were serving a feast. The father bows his head, whispers a blessing, and for a moment the room seems to glow brighter than any hearth in a castle. You step back from the window, the cold biting harder now, and realize that warmth is not always measured in degrees. It is measured in nearness, in kindness, in endurance shared. These people know that every ember must be guarded, every bit of light cherished. When the wind howls at their door, they do not curse it. They draw closer. When the food runs thin, they share more carefully. Their lives are built on the art of small miracles, finding enough wood to last the night, enough bread to fill each hand, enough faith to last until spring. You continue walking through the village, past frozen wells and silent barns. The smell of wood smoke clings to the air, earthy and comforting. You hear the faint creak of a church bell swaying in the wind, its voice thin but unwavering. The sound feels like a heartbeat, a pulse of hope beating steadily against the cold. In one yard, an old man kneels beside a frozen trough, breaking the ice for his animals. His movements are slow but sure. When he notices you, he lifts his head and smiles a small, weathered smile that seems older than winter itself. Cold morning, he says, his voice rough but kind. But the fire's still burning. You nod, understanding that his words mean more than they seem. As you turn to leave the village, you glance back and see the thin smoke rising once again from every roof. It swirls into the sky like threads of prayer, fragile but persistent. Each home, each flame, each family stands as proof that even the harshest season cannot break the will to live. The path back to the castle feels longer now, the snow crunching softer under your boots. The sun sits low on the horizon, its light pale but enduring. You pause halfway and look out over the fields. The world looks fragile, cold, quiet, vulnerable, and yet, beneath that silence, you can sense life moving. Seeds sleep under the frozen soil. Water flows unseen beneath the river's ice. The promise of spring is hidden, but certain. When you finally reach the castle gate, the sky is painted in soft colors, lavender gold, and the faintest blush of rose. The air has changed. It's still cold, but not cruel. The first warmth of evening light touches the stones, and you realize that every night survived, every fire tended, every prayer whispered in the cold is not just endurance, it is faith. As you step inside the gate, the great bell tolls again, calling the day to rest. You pause, hand on the rough stone wall, and take one last look at the white world beyond. The smoke from the village still drifts upward, thin and steadfast. The wind carries it gently toward the fading sun. And you know in that moment that within every winter, no matter how bitter, there is always a hidden spring waiting quietly to be born. By the time you step back through the castle gate, the sky has turned the color of pale amber. The sun, heavy and low, leans against the horizon like a tired traveler. Behind you, the village fades into a quiet dream of smoke and frost. Its small fires glowing like stars across the white fields. Inside the walls, the castle breathes again, slow and steady, the rhythm of life continuing despite the cold. Servants move through the corridors with lanterns, their steps echoing softly across the stones. The day, like every day before, it begins its graceful surrender to night. And as you walk deeper into the familiar hush, you feel the old world turning once more toward the stories that live between darkness and light. Evening settles over the castle like a woolen cloak. The wind that ruled the day begins to soften, curling around the towers with a sigh. Within the great hall, the hearth has been rebuilt, the first sparks catching like tiny stars in the twilight. The flames climb slowly, stretching long golden fingers toward the chimney, and soon the air fills with the warm scent of wood and smoke, the perfume of gathering. The people drift in one by one, drawn by instinct, by need, by the ancient magnetism of firelight. You find a place near the hearth, where the heat licks gently at your hands. The benches fill servants, travelers, a few guards off duty. No one speaks at first. The crackle of the fire does the talking. Someone pours ale into wooden mugs, and the sound of it, rich, quiet, deliberate, feels almost ceremonial. Then, as the warmth grows, so too does the courage to speak. It always begins with a simple thing, a question, a laugh, a memory. Tonight, it begins with the oldest of them all, a story. A gray-haired man with eyes like candlelight leans forward and speaks in a low, gravelly tone. His voice is steady but slow, like a wheel turning through snow. The room stills. The flames flicker, listening. His story is not grand, no battles, no kings, but something smaller, gentler, more human. It is about a child who found warmth in the cold by lighting a single candle for his mother who could not sleep. The boy waited beside it all night, feeding it wax from his own hands until dawn came. When the man finishes, there is silence, and then the sigh of wood collapsing into ember. The story lingers, hanging in the air like smoke. Another person speaks, a woman this time, her voice bright, her eyes sharp. She tells of her grandmother who used to weave in winter by firelight, whispering songs to the threads so the cloth would remember kindness. A guard laughs softly and adds a tale of a night he once spent in the mountains when the fire nearly died, and a stranger appeared out of the snow carrying coals wrapped in moss. He never saw the man again, but the fire lived. As each tale unfolds, the hall grows warmer. The walls, once cold and distant, seem to lean closer, listening. The fire dances in approval, its light spilling across faces that have forgotten their weariness. For a while, the differences between them, noble and servant, soldier and pilgrim, dissolve. They are simply people gathered around the same light, weaving their fears and hopes into words. The stories themselves are like sparks passing from one to another, kindling laughter here, a tear there, a moment of understanding everywhere. You realize how old this ritual is, as old as fire itself. Long before books, before parchment and ink, people carried their history in their voices. The stories were their warmth when flames grew weak, their light when candles burned low. They taught courage to the frightened, patience to the restless, and hope to the weary. And though centuries have passed, the same need still hums within the human heart, to be reminded that no one faces the cold alone. You glance toward the hearth and watch how the flames mirror the faces around it, bright, alive, ever-changing. A young page sits cross-legged by the fire, his chin resting on his hands, eyes wide in wonder. The gray-haired storyteller catches your gaze and smiles faintly, as if to say, "See, the stories still work." The fire pops, and a burst of sparks spirals upward like stars released from the earth. For a moment, it feels as though heaven itself is listening. The night deepens. More candles are lit along the walls, their light joining the fire's glow in a soft golden harmony. A woman hums a lullaby beneath her breath, a tune so simple it might be older than language. The hum catches like a wave. Others join quietly, their voices blending, until the hall seems to breathe in rhythm with them. The melody winds through the smoke, rising and falling, gentle as snow. You close your eyes and let it carry you. The sound of the voices, the hiss of the fire, the slow, steady crack of wood, all of it folds together into something ancient and tender. You can feel the warmth of the fire on your face, the rough grain of the bench beneath your fingers, the pulse of life all around you. Time itself feels distant now, irrelevant. The centuries collapse, and you are simply human, one among many gathered around a flame, keeping the darkness at bay. When you open your eyes again, the stories continue softer now, like the last notes of a fading song. Some people have drifted to sleep, their heads resting against the walls. Others sit in thoughtful silence, their faces lit by the dying glow. The fire, though smaller, burns steady, its embers deep and red, the color of memory. The old storyteller sits back at last and closes his eyes. The hall exhales, the night sighs, and for a moment everything is perfectly still. It occurs to you then that this is what survival truly means, not merely to keep breathing, but to keep telling the story. To pass on warmth through words, faith through memory, light through the sharing of hope. Every flame will die, every fire will fade, but if someone remembers the warmth, it lives again. The wind outside rises once more, pressing softly against the walls, but it cannot enter. Inside, the air glows with quiet life. The people have found their peace for the night. The castle, ancient and vast, feels smaller now, not a fortress of stone, but a home of hearts bound together by firelight and story. You look into the flames one last time. They dance slowly, whispering their own tale of forests and storms of hands that built of voices that endured. You feel a smile rise within you, a small, grateful warmth. Then you rise from the bench, stretch your tired limbs, and listen as the final log settles into embers. The light softens the story's rest, and in the hush that follows, you know that even when the night returns, the fire and the human heart will remember. When the last story fades into silence, only the fire remains breathing, softly, painting slow waves of amber across the hall. The people have drifted away one by one, their laughter and whispers swallowed by the corridors. You stay a little longer, listening to the gentle hiss of the embers as they surrender to sleep. The warmth still lingers, but it feels different now, quieter, the warmth of memory rather than flame. You rise at last, wrap your cloak around your shoulders, and step toward the doorway. Behind you, the hearth glows like the heart of the night itself. Ahead lies the dark corridor that leads back to your chamber, where the cold waits patiently, and morning still distant dreams on the other side of time. The corridor greets you with silence. Your footsteps echo softly, their sound swallowed by the stone. The torches along the walls burn low, their flames trembling as if they too are tired. The air feels cooler here, touched by the breath of the winter wind that slips through unseen cracks. Yet there is peace in it, the kind of calm that comes when everything necessary has already been said. You walk slowly, your hand brushing the rough surface of the wall, feeling its chill seep through your glove. The stone, cold and unyielding, carries a strange comfort. It has stood through every night, kept every secret endured, every flame and storm. When you reach your chamber, the door gives a soft creak as it opens. Inside, the air is thick with the faint scent of smoke and wool. The small lamp on your bedside table still burns its light, small but steady, like a watchful soul refusing to sleep. You close the door gently behind you and stand there for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the night. Somewhere beyond the walls, the wind moans softly across the battlements, a long, low sigh that sounds less like loneliness and more like the earth itself exhaling. You walk to the window and draw back the curtain. Outside, the sky is a sea of deep indigo dusted with stars. The moon has risen again, pale and full, casting its light across the courtyard below. The snow shimmers faintly in its glow, silvered and still. You can see the faint trails of footprints where people crossed. Earlier servants, guards, maybe even a wandering cat. Now all of them are gone, and the world sleeps beneath the watch of the moon. You rest your hand against the cold glass and feel the sharp bite of the night beyond it. Yet it doesn't frighten you anymore. The darkness, after all you've seen, no longer feels empty. It feels alive, vast, patient, and full of quiet stories. Somewhere out there, beyond the walls and fields, other fires burn in other hearths. Other souls sit beside them, telling their own tales, holding their own candles against the same wind. You imagine them the distant villages, the lone travelers on snowy roads, the monks awake in their chapels, all linked by the invisible thread of warmth that runs through every human heart. You turn back toward the room. The lamp flickers its flame, bending as the wind sighs against the window. You move closer and place your hand above it, feeling the small pocket of heat rise to meet your skin. How fragile, you think, and yet how faithful. A single flame, so small, it could vanish with a breath, and still it refuses to die. Perhaps that is what people have always known, even when they could not name it, that in every act of care, every whisper of hope, every shared story or prayer, we keep the flame alive. You sit on the edge of the bed and pull the blanket over your knees. The straw beneath rustles softly, familiar now, almost kind. The weight of the day settles gently upon you, not as fatigue, but as gratitude. You think of the villagers and their humble hearts, of the stories told beside the great fire, of the laughter, and the silences, the prayers, and the dreams. All of it, every flicker of life within this long, cold night feels connected, a tapestry woven from moments of warmth. You lift the small lamp from the table and place it near the hearth in your room. The ashes there are gray and still, but beneath them you find a faint glow, the ghost of yesterday's fire. You kneel and breathe softly across it, coaxing it to wake. The ember glows brighter, catching on the dry twigs you lay upon it. Slowly, shyly, a new flame stirs to life. It crackles once, then steadies its light, spreading across the room. The shadows retreat to the corners, and for a moment the space feels sacred, not for its grandeur, but for its simplicity. You sit back and watch the flame dance. Each movement feels alive, purposeful, like a silent language only the soul understands. The fire reflects in your eyes, tiny suns mirrored in human gaze. You realize with a quiet smile that this is how humanity has always spoken to the night, not through words, but through light. We've never truly conquered the darkness. We've simply learned to live within it, carrying our own stars. Outside, the wind rises again, brushing the walls with a sound like the turning of pages. You think of how many centuries this castle has seen, how many winters, how many dawns. Generations have come and gone, their fires burned and faded, yet here you sit, warmed by the same element that kept them alive. It humbles you. It also comforts you. For in that continuity, that endless rhythm of flame and breath of night and morning, there is something eternal. The lamp beside the hearth burns lower now. Its oil nearly spent, it flickers weakly, its small light trembling like a final sigh. You rise, take it gently in your hand, and carry it to your bedside once more. You set it down and watch as the flame steadies, as if grateful for the rest. You lie back, the blanket heavy across your chest, the warmth from the fire brushing your face in slow, invisible waves. Your thoughts drift like smoke. You remember the sound of voices by the hearth, the sight of the village smoke against the morning sky, the glow of candles trembling before sleep. You think of all those who came before, their lives simple but full, their nights cold but never empty. You think of the fire, the oldest friend humanity has ever known, and how it has carried every story, every dream, every small act of love through the endless winter of time. Your eyes grow heavy. The last thing you see before sleep claims you is the glow of the fire's light painting the walls with gold, It flickers once, and steadies a quiet heartbeat in the stillness. Outside the wind softens, the castle exhales. The night full and deep leans closer to listen. And as you drift toward dreams, you feel it the gentle truth that every warmth, no matter how small, leaves something behind. A memory, a comfort, a promise that when darkness comes again, light will always find its way back. In that final thought, the world fades gently to black, and the last light of the night burns quietly on.